This is Eric Argiulo, your host of Pro Wrestling Radio. And don't forget to check out my daily blog, www.camelclutchblog.com, where you can read about wrestling, mixed martial arts, football, all sports, pop culture, politics, and more. That's www.camelclutchblog.com.
Tito, what exactly happened there?
Oh, Lord. My knee might be twisted, torn ligaments or something. I know, Greg Valentine, that I beat you. I proved to you and everybody else, Greg Valentine, that I was the better man. And after the match was over, Lord, he's trying to hurt me and put me where I'm not able to defend this title within 30 days so he can take that belt. He proved that he couldn't beat me tonight, Lord. And now he's going to do anything in his power to put me out of wrestling. Greg Valentine, I won that match, but the war is not over, brother. I want you back, Greg Valentine. You try to break my leg and you... Oh, Lord.
Tito, take it easy. Now, we saw what happened. We saw that you did have a collision with the referee. We saw that you did manage to survive that comeback and pin Greg Valentine. But after that, he took advantage of your back while it was turned. He gave you a big knee to the back, clamped on his leg lock, and would not let go. Now, is this going to interfere with this 30-day clause?
Well, Lord, right now I don't know. The only thing I know right now is that I had a hard time. I can't walk on my own right now. And I don't know how much damage it did to my legs, to my knees. But I guarantee you, might not be able to defend this in 30 days, Greg. But if I can walk, you're going to see me back in that ring within 30 days. And, Lord, I want to make it clear to you and to everybody else out there listening. Greg, it's not over between you and I. I still got the belt, but it's not for the belt anymore. I want you. Cobarde, pagarás. Tito Santana te hará que pagues. Arriba!
What you gonna do? That's it. WBCB presents. That's cool. Are you talking to me? Pro Wrestling Radio. Oh, get some! Did you feel it? Oh, the damn goal! Call in with a question or comment. 6-1, just bring it! What is he doing? At 1-888-922-2149. Oh, it's true! Don't make me hurt you! To be the man! You got it! That's all time! I hate your ever... And now your host of the show. That's how I live! And that's the bottom line!
Good afternoon and welcome to a very special edition of Pro Wrestling Radio. Without further ado, let me bring up my first guest. You know, in the 10 years that I've been doing Pro Wrestling Radio and all the superstars that I've had on in the wrestling industry, it's guys like my guest today that get me excited, that get the juices going, that bring the kid out in me. Here's a man that I remember going to see at the Philadelphia Spectrum when I was about 8 or 9 years old, wrestling the likes of Greg the Hammer Valentine, Don Morocco, the Iron Sheik, and as I get older and watch the tapes, watch the DVDs, I am still just as entertained today by this man's matches as I was as a kid. So without further ado, let's bring him up. He is a true WWE Hall of Famer. He is the author of Tales from the Ring. Tito Santana, welcome to Pro Wrestling Radio.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor to have you. And as I was telling you a couple of minutes before the show started, your book, Tales from the Ring, now available on Amazon.com, everywhere. I absolutely love it.
I've had quite a few fans that have read the book that, they learned a lot about me, about my life. And, I've had some people that have told me that tears have come down their face, which, wow. It's nice to hear that. They really enjoyed the book, and according to you, you really enjoyed it also, and thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. What do you think? I don't know if you were able to hear on the phone. What do you think when you listen back and you hear your old promos and you just kind of envision and just sit back and listen?
Well, it brings back memories, just like it happened yesterday. That feud with Greg the Hammer Valentine, it's probably the match that made me, or the feud that made Tito Santana. It was the longest feud in the history of the WWF, according to Howard Finkel.
Wow.
So, I mean, for us to go out there and then have all kinds of different matches, and the houses would never drop. You know, we kept selling out everywhere we went, and it was a great, great feeling. Yeah.
What was it? And I've had Greg on the show before, and he speaks very highly of you. What was it about Greg and the chemistry that you guys had that made it such a successful feud?
Well, I think day in and day out, every time we went into the ring, we gave him a different match. We gave him a fight, and the people really believed what they saw, because we pretty much, after a match, I would always go up to him and I'd say, God, I've been in easier street fights than the match that I just had with you. I mean, we had them all. We had hour matches, we had time limit matches, we had no DQs, tape fist, lumberjack matches. And the fans, you know, were never disappointed. You know, every time we stepped into the ring, they knew that they were going to see a fight, and you know, they believed what they saw. Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're talking to WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and Tito, you know, in reading the book, I wrote down so many things, made so many little notes of things I wanted to ask you about during the interview today. And the first one, I don't think in the 10 years that I've done the show on the air that I've had anybody that was on the plane when this happened. You talked about the infamous Mad Dog Vachon incident. I never realized you were on the plane when he opened the door. Yeah, we were in the AWA, and you know, we'd wrestle, and then we'd have some beers in the plane, and we'd play cards on the way home. And you know, I heard that Mad Dog Vachon would get drunk and go a little crazy, and you know, it shocked the heck out of me.
How scared were? I mean, I'd be scared to death if somebody opened up the plane door.
Yeah, but you know, luckily the pilots, both were pilots with Northwest Airlines, and they had both flown in Vietnam. I got to know the pilots, and you know, we had two pilots, you know, always on the plane, or most of the time, and I felt very safe whenever they, you know, were out there in the front.
Oh, okay. Coming from the era of wrestling that you came from, and it was such a kayfabe era as compared to today's wrestling industry with newsletters and the internet, was it hard for you to sit down and write a book and talk about some things that maybe 20 years ago you never would have talked about?
Not really. You know, I just I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could. You know, I got a compliment from one of the guys that I have never read any of the other wrestlers' books. Mm-hmm. I've started to, but you know, and you know, he agreed with me. My book is different. I don't have animosity towards the McMahons or very many of the promoters or any of the wrestlers. The only guy that I have any animosity over is actually Ole Anderson.
Yeah.
You know, so I try to think back, and I try to be as honest as I possibly could, and share the insides of you know, the wrestlers and what I went through. Pretty much every wrestler went through. Some guys had a lot easier than others. You know, example, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. You know, they were always on top, and you know, in a lot of cases, I would have to say that they were the franchise of wherever they were at. You know, and other than them too, we all had to deal with different promoters in different ways, and we all had our different problems. And you know, Ole Anderson was like a demon to me.
Yeah, because I've seen you in other interviews even before the book came out, and I remember watching one interview that you did. And, you know, you had no animosity against anybody but Ole Anderson. And I think you even said in the interview, you said at the time, this is the only guy that I've had any animosity with. So it was interesting to hear you go even more in-depth than you ever did before on your thoughts about, and I guess your struggles with Ole.
Yeah, I mean, those were true life experiences. I had just bought a condominium in Atlanta, and my wife had just delivered a baby, and you know, he knew, and as soon as I bought the condominium, he started treating me like
Like crap, I guess you could say on the radio, right?
Yeah, like crap, and you know, could care less. He got rid of my guaranteed money that Jim Barnett had promised me before I went there, and now he's trying to get rid of me to send me to Louisiana, working an angle with me, you know, with Bill Watts, and you know, there was nothing that I could really do. You know, they had me, you know, and I'm so grateful for Vince Sr. when all this was going on. I would keep Vince in touch. I would keep in touch with Vince and let him know what was going on. And when I got the phone call to call him, you know, the following morning, and when he told me, you know, Tito, it's time for you to come home, I mean, that was God sent. You know, it was. I told him that's all you have to. That's all I needed to hear. You don't even have to make me any promises. You know, I'm there.
You know, something that struck me as I read through your book was the fondness that you had for Vince McMahon Sr. and that, you know, you talked throughout the book and you wrestled for this promoter and that promoter, and I've heard all the stories over the years, but it seemed like Vince was one of these guys, Vince Sr., that was more than just a promoter. It seems like he was as much a mentor to you as he was your boss.
Yes, he was. You know, my experience with Vince, you know, he never made me any promises. You know, all he did was give me an opportunity. A lot of the other wrestlers that I would hear, if Vince would tell you he was going to do something, I mean, he would give his left arm in order for him to keep his word. You know,
yeah.
He never burnt anybody, and you know, it was nice to know. I mean, I came in the first time I came into New York. I was in 1979. I was just 3 years in the business, you know, so here is somebody who was a nobody, and I mean, he treated me like I was one of the top guys, you know, from day one, even though I was just climbing the ladder.
Yeah. Well, you know, I got to tell you, Tito, even the 15 minutes before we set everything up to go on the air here, I've been getting calls left and right from fans that have been wanting to talk to you. In addition to broadcasting here in Philadelphia, we also simulcast on the Internet, so we're going on around the country. And I have a full board of calls of some of your biggest fans waiting to ask you some questions. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to bring them up in the air.
Sure.
All right, excellent. We will start out in Virginia, and we'll go to Ted. We'll give my producer, Bill, a second to bring Ted up. And all I ask is when you come on the air today to keep things moving, if you just come on and state your question or questions, and then you can drop off and listen to Tito answer. And that way we can keep on moving and get as many fans in here today as possible. So, Ted, you're on the air with Tito Santana.
Hey, I got questions. But first, it's a pleasure, honor, privilege to talk to you, Mr. Santana. You are always one of my favorite wrestlers.
Thank you very much.
And my first question is this. What do you think of Eddie Guerrero's run as world champion, being that they kind of like portrayed him as one of the first Latino champions, but I know Pedro Morales won the title, you know, before him. But, you know, what do you think of Eddie's run as champion?
Well, you know, it was nice to see somebody get a chance at a title match. I think, and nothing against Eddie Guerrero, but I think that it's a big difference of when Eddie Guerrero was the champion and when Pedro Morales was the champion. You know, when Pedro Morales was the champion, somebody the size of Eddie would never have even been considered to get a title shot. So it was a different era, you know. I thought Eddie Guerrero was a great champion. It was very, very hard for me when I learned when he passed. You know, he fell into the same trap that a lot of the other wrestlers fell into. And Eddie's problems were early in his career. I think he finally had straightened up his life, and but a lot of damage had been done to his insides, and you know, it was sad. But I mean, as far as working, you know, Eddie was a small guy, and he was as good as it got.
Yeah, and you know what? If I could chime in here for a second, you actually tell a great story about Eddie Guerrero and the appreciation that he had for you in your book.
Yeah, I mean, I never forget when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, because I knew Chavo Guerrero, and I very, very vaguely knew Eddie Guerrero. And I was in the dressing room with my mom and my brother and my sisters. They came in for when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he hugged me, and he thanked me. He says, Tito, you opened up a lot of doors for a lot of the Hispanics. You were true class, and, God, it made me feel good, and I know that Eddie was a very religious person at the end, and to hear that from the world champion at the time, it was a real honor to me.
Ted, do you have another question before I move on?
Yes, another question is a twofold question, and this is, why didn't Vince Sr. put the title on either you or Don Morocco? And also, why didn't the NWA ever have a Latino world champion? And I'd just like to listen to that answer. But like I said, Mr. Santana, you definitely was a class act and one of the greatest I have ever seen.
Well, I correct, the South, pretty much answers your question why there wasn't a Latino champion or a black champion in the South. I had to battle with a little bit of racism in the past, and right. I do believe that they didn't think that a minority would draw in the South, and I thought they were totally wrong. As far as me getting a shot, back in the 80s and early 90s, good guys didn't go up against good guys. I believe that I could have carried, the world title because I know that I was a better worker than Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was a little, bigger than I was. And he had a lot of charisma, and I was very, very grateful to be in his cards. But either I or Don Morocco, Don Morocco, when I came in, and he was the Intercontinental title champion, when I beat him, God, the people in Boston exploded. Don Morocco was a great worker and a great talker, and he would have been a great world champion, too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, we'll move on from Ted, and we'll take a local call here before we go to our first break. And I know Ron has been good to hang on for a while. So, Ron, if you can come on and just state your question, or if you have more than one, and then we'll turn you down, and you can listen to Tito.
Okay, this is an honor. I'm a little nervous, though. Bear with me.
So am I. It's okay.
Because I followed Tito Santana since I can remember him coming into WWF.
Yeah.
Listen, one question is this: who was tougher, Don Morocco or Greg Valentine to wrestle?
Greg Valentine. I mean, Greg Valentine was like a pit bull, and you couldn't rest with Don Morocco. You had periods in the match, even if you went in a long match. There was periods where you could rest, and Greg Valentine would just keep coming. You knock him down, he'd get up and keep coming after you. And, Greg Valentine would lay in the punches and the forearms and the chops a lot harder than Don Morocco. You were in a fight with Greg Valentine. I mean, you knew it. My body was always black and blue, and, of course, I would retaliate, and I'd lay him in, and, he didn't mind. I used to think that, Greg probably, I hate to say this, but he probably, he's the type of guy who would tell his girlfriends to beat him up, I think he liked pain.
Yeah, that's an interesting one right there. Next time I have Greg on, I'll have to play him that clip.
Did you say something to me? I didn't understand that.
Oh, yeah, no, I said that was funny. I said next time I have Greg on, I'll have to play him what you said and get his reaction to that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he loved pain, and I said, God, I know that every time, and I wrestled him for a year and a half, you were going to take a beating.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank Ron for getting in, and what I'm going to do is, Tito, I'll ask you to be so kind as to hang on. I'll take a quick timeout, and we'll come back and take some more calls.
Sounds good.
That'd be great. We are honored today to be talking to the author of Tales from the Ring, available now at bookstores everywhere, on Amazon.com. He is a WWE Hall of Famer, Tito Santana, and he is here for the entire hour today on Pro Wrestling Radio. And if you want to try and get in and ask Tito a question, you can do so at 1-888-922-2149. That's 888-922-2149, or locally at 215-949-3232. You are listening to the radio show in a couple of different places. One, live on the internet at WBCB1490.com. Archived on my website, ProWrestlingRadio.com. Via podcast on iTunes, and on the air on WBCB 1490 AM.
Morocco, I haven't forgotten the scar you left on my forehead. You did a job on me by attacking me from the back. And more than physical punishment that I want to put to you, I promised the people that I would go after your tag team belt, your title, and take that away from you because I know that would hurt you more than physical punishment. You love the glory, you love the money. And I feel that if I take that away from you, that would hurt you more than any physical punishment I can put to you. Le garantizo a toda la gente mexicana que me está escuchando, este cobarde me atacó y me insultó y me abrió la frente y me dejó la cara marcada. Y ahora tengo la oportunidad de ganarle y quitarle la faja a Morocco, que es lo más importante para él que su familia. El dinero y la gloria es muy importante para Don Morocco. Y Tito Santana viene a Los Ángeles a pelear en contra de este cobarde y quitarle el título que es muy importante para el cobarde de Morocco. Morocco, I can't wait to step in the ring against you there in L.A., brother, and put a punishment to you that you will never forget when I walk out of that ring with that title. Arriba!
And now back to more Pro Wrestling Radio and your host of the show, Eric Bartulo.
All righty, welcome back to Pro Wrestling Radio. A couple of quick notes before we bring Tito back. I write a column for PhillyBurbs.com, and I write a column 5 days a week about wrestling, sports, pop culture, politics. You can go directly to theCamelClutchBlog.com. That's theCamelClutchBlog.com. And I actually have a review up of Tito's book from a couple of days ago, so you might want to check that out. Also, my website is ProWrestlingRadio.com. That's ProWrestlingRadio.com. If you missed any of today's interview with Tito, we'll have it up on the website. We have a whole ton of classic interviews. We have last week's interview with Terry Runnels up on the site and more. And again, that's ProWrestlingRadio.com. Next Saturday, we will have the author of Ring of Hell, a much different book, Matthew Randazzo. And then July 26th, 1 hour with Hot Rod, Rowdy Roddy Piper here on Pro Wrestling Radio. All right, let's bring him back up. He is our guest for the entire show today, Tito Santana. And, Tito, before we get back to the phones, you brought up a story that I had never heard before in your book, and you talk about having a conversation, I think you said it was with Pat Patterson, in which you were told you were very close to becoming World Heavyweight Champion.
Yes, there was a period in the WWF when I think when they were discussing to make me a matador, they were thinking about going into South America and Mexico. Mm-hmm. And I think at that time they were considering on putting the title on me. And I remember like it happened yesterday. I believe we were got in Toronto when Pat Patterson came out of said, Tito, we've just been in a meeting. It was a very hard decision, but we have decided to go with Bret Hart to put the belt on him instead of you. It was you two guys were up for it, and I just remember it's like he tore right into me. I wish I would have never known that. I don't know if he was sincere, honest, or just blowing my horn. I just wish I had never heard that. Yeah. Something else you talk about in your book as well. You talk about coming back to the WWF right at the time where you were in the middle of negotiating, I guess you could call it that, with Bill Watts and between Ole Anderson. And I want to ask you, because it dawned on me, because you talk about at the time, Jimmy Snuka got into some trouble, so you were brought back and you took some of his dates. How different do you think your career would have went if that incident never happened with Jimmy Snuka and you wound up going to the Mid-South full time? God, I don't even want to think about it. I know, if I would have known that Bill Watts was really sincere about helping me become, because he told me that I was a very good worker and that I just needed a little bit of polishing to become a full-time main eventer, throughout the country, I would have been more than happy to have gone, and worked for him. At the time, I really didn't have much of a choice. It was either Bill Watts or thank God that New York came through for me. I have no idea what would have happened. And in our sport, I mean, you saw it all the time. Injuries or problems, got other wrestlers breaks. The only thing the promoters are interested in is drawing big crowds. And if you weren't the guy, I mean, they overlooked a bunch of things, but eventually they would give up and put somebody in that spot.
Yeah.
Again, I would hate to think how my career would have gone. I think the fact that I had already been in New York and I had already become a tag team champion, I think that I was in the plans for Vince McMahon Sr. to bring me in. And because I know when he left, he told me, he says, you need to go get a little bit more experience, and then we'll bring you back, and we're going to make you a star. So I think that regardless, I was going to get a break in the WWF. I think it was just going to take a little bit longer if things didn't happen the way they did.
All right. And again, we are speaking to the legendary WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana. Tito, the author of Tales from the Ring. Tito talks about all of this and much, much more in his book, available at bookstores everywhere, on Amazon.com. I got a link up on ProWrestlingRadio.com as well. And I'll give you out the phone numbers here, and then we'll get to the phones because we have a whole load of fans here waiting to talk to Tito. 1-888-922-2149. That's 1-888-922-2149. And you can talk to Tito Santana. All right, let's go to Chuck, who's been hanging on for a little while. Chuck, if you can just come on the air and state your question or questions, and we'll turn you down and let Tito answer.
Okay, hi, guys.
Hello.
I had three questions for Tito.
Okay.
First question, Tito, you mentioned Don Morocco before. A lot of Philadelphia area fans will remember that you defeated Morocco for the Eastern Championship Wrestling title in Philadelphia, which was like a precursor to the Extreme Championship Wrestling. But then they stripped you of the belt. What happened there?
Well, when I went to wrestle for ECW, they had a big tournament for the ECW Championship match, and I think I ended up wrestling 5 times before I, won the title. Paul Lee Dangerously was the booker and the promoter at the time with a partner, and I never really cared too much for him, and I don't think he really cared too much for me. And when I got done and figured out who was running the show, I really never intended to go back to defend the title.
All right. And Chuck, do you have another question?
3 questions altogether.
Okay, if you just want to throw your 2 out there, and then we'll throw them right at Tito.
Okay. Second question. I know that you played football at West Texas State, where Tully Blanchard was your quarterback. Why has there been so many football players from West Texas State to break into wrestling? What is the reason? And my other question was, whenever I run into old-time wrestlers, they speak very, very highly of Vince McMahon Sr. and how he was such a gem as a promoter. But when the conversation turns to his son, Vince Jr., they don't speak too well of him. My question is, was Vince Sr. such a gem, such a saint as a promoter, or is he just compared favorably to his son?
All right, thanks a lot, Chuck. Were you able to hear everything, Tito?
No, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Well, his first question was he wanted to ask you why you think so many wrestlers from so many football players from West Texas State University get into wrestling.
Well, I believe that the roots to all the wrestlers there was Terry Funk. Terry Funk, the Funk family, his father owned Amarillo Championship Wrestling, and Terry Funk played football for West Texas State, and he'd go and he'd meet a lot of the wrestlers and played, the likes of Bobby Duncombe, Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, and you can just go down the line. I mean, there were some great, great stars that came out of there, but I do believe that it was Terry Funk. Okay.
And his second question was, he said that he's met a lot of, the old school, the old-timer wrestlers over the years, and they always speak so favorably of Vince Sr. and not so much Vince Jr., and he was just asking how you would compare the two.
Well, Vince Sr. was a local promoter, and he ran it like a clock. I mean, he had a small office in New York, an old beat up on 42nd Street in a little old hotel. He used to rent 2 rooms, and he'd be there Monday nights right before, or Monday all day right before Madison Square Garden shows, and then the rest of his bookings were done from Florida, or I believe he also lived in Cape Cod, somewhere in Maine or Massachusetts. Because I used to travel with Angelo Savoldi, and they used to call him at the different places to let him know how much each venue had drawn. You know, I really don't have anything bad to say about Vince Jr. A lot of people do, you know. What wrestlers didn't realize is, you know, the runs weren't going to last forever, you know. I was very grateful. I was with the WWE. I had a great run. I was there for 12 years. And when it was over, it was over. I mean, you can't stay on top forever. Not even Hulk Hogan stayed on top forever. A lot of the guys have a lot of animosity because, you know, once their run was over, they hadn't saved their money, and you know, they knew that they weren't going to be making the kind of money that they made with the WWE. Vince McMahon, completely different type of promoter than Vince Sr. He was a complete businessman. You know, he just cared and took care of the company. You know, and he had some big dreams and you know, make it as big as it got. And he was a no-nonsense guy. You know, he was looking for guys to make him money, and you had a little short run. The run was over, and you know, it was over. Yeah.
A question I want to ask you before we get to our next caller, because you talk, you go through the first several WrestleManias in your book, and you talk a lot about your relationship with Andre the Giant, and you touch on the anticipated maybe some complications going into the WrestleMania 3 matchup with Hulk Hogan. And something that I recently heard from a very credible source, and I'm sorry I didn't ask Paul Orndorff this when I had him on the air, was that Paul Orndorff was a backup plan for Andre the Giant if Andre just wasn't healthy or just, you know, wasn't interested in doing the main event, that Paul Orndorff was a backup to the main event at WrestleMania 3. Do you know anything about that?
No, I didn't. I mean, I used to play cards with Andre pretty much every night. You know, he'd already be in the dressing room, and like I had no choice. You know, he was waiting for me to play cards. If Arnold Skaaland wasn't there, I'd be the ones that would be playing either cribbage or gin rummy with him. We hung out after the wrestling matches pretty much every night. I was just pretty much a companion when he traveled. So I was really totally surprised that he didn't discuss any of the plans that day. Like I said before, we kind of thought that Andre wasn't ready to relinquish, you know, the leadership, and we thought there was going to be a little bit of problem between him and Hulk. But to our surprise, I mean, to me, that was the best big man match that I had ever seen. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go back to the phones, and Vince is hanging on, waiting to get through. And Vince, again, if you want to come on and state your question or questions, then we'll turn you down and let Tito answer.
Thank you for taking my phone call, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, I'll state the questions to you, Tito. First, it's nice to just be on the same phone line with you, so thank you. Bobby the Brain Heenan, you had a nice relationship. It reminded me of Muhammad Ali and Howard Cosell. I loved it. And I was just curious how you guys dealt with it. Also, I would like to know, Eric, about El Salvador. Where did that come from? And I don't think Tito ever turned anybody, so he was the first clean-cut, decent wrestler there was in his career. Yeah, excellent. Some good questions. So, all right, I will pose them to Tito, and we'll see what he's got to say. Thanks. Repeat the first one, please. Sure. It was actually a pretty witty comment. He talked about your relationship with Bobby Heenan on camera, and he compared it to a Howard Cosell, Muhammad Ali relationship, and just wanted your thoughts on the Brain. Well, I think the true wrestling fan understands that, you know, I thought Bobby Heenan was over pretty well, you know, throughout the country. And when somebody like Bobby Heenan liked you, the more he mentioned you, the more he liked, you know, it meant that he liked you more. And any time that Bobby would say something, you know, to irritate the people, I think that would give me more fans. I became friends with Bobby Heenan when I was in the AWA, and
he helped me a lot with my interviews then. I mean, not too many people that can talk like Bobby Heenan.
Right. He also wanted to know your thoughts on the El Matador gimmick.
The El Matador, the way it all turned out, I do believe that at the first thoughts of making me El Matador, maybe there were some plans to make me the world champion. Maybe there weren't. I saw, I thought I knew what was going on, in my career, but most of the times I didn't. I think that I did a pretty good job with El Matador, so they can't tell me that, I didn't get over, as El Matador. It was Vince McMahon who chose for El Matador not to get over as big as I would have liked to.
Yeah.
I figured that I was big enough as Tito Santana that I didn't need a gimmick. I thought I was a good enough wrestler to carry the load with my name, and I felt that I had a lot of steam left. I would have preferred to stay Tito Santana. I don't think that I needed El Matador.
Yeah. And the last question that he had, and I actually wrote this down too because I wanted to ask you about this. Are you surprised, or was there ever any plans? I know you touched on it briefly in your book to turn heel in the WWE. You're one of the few guys. Ricky Steamboat is another guy that comes to mind that had a big national run that as a babyface that never turned heel. Are you kind of disappointed? Were there ever any plans to do that?
Yeah, I figured I would have had a chance to do what Hulk did, turn heel. I mean, I saw a lot of wrestlers that were baby faces that would turn heels and did a great job, and I figured that I was a better worker than most of these guys were, and I figured if they could do it, I figured I could do it.
Yeah.
So I was interested, to see what was going to happen there. When Rick Martel and I did our angle, I asked Vince if I would be the one that would be the heel, to let me be the heel. I wanted to be a heel, but unbeknown to me, they already had the plan of Rick Martel becoming the model, and I'm sure that Rick had already been working on his interviews, and he already had his costume, and so, I was never considered to be the heel, in that case.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to, once again, ask you to hang on. We'll go to our next break, and when we come back, we'll take some calls and wrap up. Is that good for you?
Eric?
Yes, you there?
If I lose you, call me back at 973.
All right, well, don't give your phone number out in the air, but I'll call you back.
Well, I'm on a cell phone.
Oh, well, you know what? I'll call back that cell phone if I lose you, but I don't want you to give your phone number out in the air.
Okay.
All right, so hang on if you can.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Tito. All righty. And, again, we are talking to the legendary WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana. And you're listening to the radio show on WBCB1490.com, archived on ProWrestlingRadio.com, iTunes, and on WBCB 1490 AM.
The entire tri-state area is talking about inside of this 15-foot high steel cage. The Macho Man Randy Savage and adorable Adrian Adonis against the team of Tito Santana and wrestling's own living legend Bruno Sammartino. And Bruno,
Ken, a while ago, I heard one of the interviews they get with Adrian Adonis and this Savage, and they were saying, hey, those guys are in shape. Sammartino's in shape, but they can be mean. It's funny how they're changing their tone. Last time they said it was a washed-up old man. Now they know they're in shape, and can you get mean? Can you get down? Let me tell you something, Adonis and Savage. I was champion longer than any man in the history of professional wrestling. You know why? Because if a guy wanted to wrestle, fine, I'd wrestle him. But if he wanted to get mean, I showed him. I taught him what being mean was all about. I can go in there against the best, and whatever way you want to do, we'll do it. And now you're going to find out. We showed you.
Bruno, you know something? One-on-one is tough in a cage match, Adrian and Savage. Can you imagine what it's going to be like 4 against 4 people in there going at each other? We're going to have pork chops in there, Adrian Adonis. You cost me the belt, my man. We're coming in a cage to settle things once and for all, and somebody's going to get hurt. Les garantizo, cobarde. Corrieron la última vez. Esta vez no hay para dónde correr. There's nowhere to run, Bruno. And we're going to prove one thing, my man. we're going to prove who the real men are in the cage.
1 week from tonight, Madison Square Garden.
And now back to more Pro Wrestling Radio and your host of the show, Eric Bartulo.
All righty, thank you very much. And there you heard him. We are back with the legendary WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana. And Tito, I don't know if you're able to hear, but it was an interview that you cut for New York with Bruno Sammartino. And, I've had Bruno on probably more than anybody in the 10 years that I've done the show, and he's grown to be a good friend. And I just want to ask you what your memories and thoughts are on Bruno Sammartino.
Well, when I first came into New York in 1979, to me, Bruno was like the godfather of professional wrestling. He would come in and everybody, talk about people respecting somebody. He had the utmost respect from all the wrestlers. And I befriended Bruno, and I would always ask him for advice, and he always gave me some good advice, he would tell me what to say to Vince Sr. whenever I wanted to talk to Vince, if something was bothering me. Bruno was a great man. He was a great champion. I went into Little Italy with him a couple of occasions, and, talk about somebody who was famous, He'd walk into Little Italy, and people would just stick their heads out their windows. He was the man. Wow.
Something I want to ask you about, and you talk a little bit about this in your book as well. You are known for just being in phenomenal athletic condition, but, the wrestling business had changed, and guys were getting bigger, and guys were getting ripped, and just turning into these monster-bound muscle men. Were you ever tempted to use steroids to hang in there with these guys?
I believe I mentioned it in the book. I think I mentioned it when I joined Strikeforce with Rick Martel. Rick Martel was ripped pretty good, and I always took pride in, I worked out like a dog, and, your body's only going to respond so much without steroids. So I always looked like an athlete, but I was never ripped, I never had the steroid body. But I asked Vince Jr., if I needed to do anything special without really coming out and saying, do I need to get on steroids? And he says, Tito, you don't really need to do anything. He says, you're not going to make any more or any less because if you change your body. So he just came out and told me, in so many words that I didn't really have to get on steroids. And I will forever respect him for that, because if he would have said, get on steroids, I would have got on steroids. Wow.
I know you did that one shot for AAA on that When Worlds Collide pay-per-view, but were you ever, speaking of tempted, I hate to use the same word again, but were you ever tempted to just go down to Mexico? I would imagine if you went to Mexico and wrestled full-time, you would be, as received as somebody like Mil Mascaras down there with your heritage and your background.
I had traveled so much. When I quit, gave my notice in 1993 to Vince McMahon, I figured I was done traveling. I started doing independence, and I would do it only on the weekends. And I was very, very happy just working on the weekends. I would have never gone anywhere to where I would have had to go do it full time anymore. I had done well. I had saved my money, and I really didn't need to wrestle anymore to survive. WCW, Eric Bischoff wanted to talk to me about me coming in there, and I had no desire to go to the WCW and do it again full time. I figured I had been gone away from my family for enough years that I wanted to be home and be a husband and a father.
Excellent. All right, let's go back to the phones, and Jimmy's been hanging on for a while. And Jimmy, I just want to ask you to come on and state your questions, and we'll pose them to Tito, and we'll move on. How you doing?
Pretty good, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great.
My question is, I know that Tito now owns a salon in New Jersey, and I was just wondering if he actually does any of the haircutting, because I'm from up here in Boston, and I would love to go down to New Jersey to get my haircut. Former ECW champion.
Excellent. So would I. All right. Thanks again for checking in, Tito. This is something I wanted to ask you about. You have your salon that you own. Do you actually cut hair in the salon?
No, I don't. But throughout the year, I come into work on Tuesday afternoons. I'm a school teacher now, and I'm usually out of school at 2:30, and I go to the salon at 3. And on Tuesdays, I'm there from 3 to 7.
Wow.
And sometimes I come in on Saturday just to visit for, because a lot of the fans or a lot of the customers like to talk to me, and I come in there. No, the only thing that I do is I take money and I sweep floors, and I do towels, and I just do whatever my wife would do if I wasn't there. I do all the cleanup, all the dirty work.
Tito, why do you think, yourself, it seems like you made a real clean transition into the private sector, so to speak, from pro wrestling, but you hear so many tragic stories about some of your peers from your era that just have such a difficult time making the transition. Why do you think you were able to do it and make such a successful transition as opposed to some of your peers?
Well, I do believe that one of the main reasons was the fact that I was financially stable. I had saved and I had made some investments, and I also forever grateful for taking my education serious. When I was playing football at West Texas State, I got a degree with a double major, physical education and a Spanish major. I was able to go into teaching. Teachers don't make a lot of money, but we get great health benefits. And, just to pay your benefits, to me, was a big plus for us. And, the more you are, the longer you are in teaching, the more you make. It's not that bad once you get to the top of the scale. Plus, I really enjoyed it. It was a physical education teacher who to me, saved my life and got me on the right track. And that's one of the main reasons that I decided to write the book. I figured if I could help somebody, and a minority, or not necessarily a minority, there are people that of all races that struggle in life and may see no hope. If you want something bad enough, you can do it. I mean, I came from nothing, migrant workers, and a coach in 8th grade turned my life around and made me believe in myself, and I started playing sports. And, the reason I became a physical education major was because I figured that he helped me. If I could help somebody else, I would have been paying what he did for me.
Real quick, because I know I only have you for a couple of more minutes. How did you come up with the flying forearm? Where today, I don't know how much wrestling you watch today, but you can turn on wrestling and see 20 high spots in 2 minutes. But the flying forearm, for its time, very innovative. How did you come up with that, and how did you come up with ending your interviews with Arriba?
The flying forearm, when I first started, I used to do a flying double chop because once I started wrestling with Ivan Putski, had the hammer a chop across the chest, a double chop. So I figured I was a little bit more athletic than Ivan Putski at the time. I figured I'd take it to the air and throw the flying double chop. And then I don't know, just out of nowhere, one day I tried just the flying forearm to the head, and I was able to glide through the air and it landed pretty good. That's how I started using that. And Arriba, believe it or not, I was in the AWA wrestling for Vern Gagne, and Dino Bravo, who ended up being a great friend of mine. I first met him in 1977. When I first started, we were in NWA in Atlanta. In 1980, Dino Bravo told me, he says, "Tito, you gotta get a catchy phrase to finish your interview." And he kept thinking, and this was over a period of a couple of weeks. He says, "I got it." He says, "Whenever you finish an interview from now on, just put your arm up and throw it up in the air and just holler, Arriba." And that's where it came from.
Wow. Well, Tito, it's just gone so fast. It was just such an honor and a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Thank you very much. Just let me know. I'll be more than happy to do it again with you. And I want to thank all the fans for remaining fans of mine. I've been very, very lucky to have as many fans throughout the world. They've always been behind me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, good luck with the book. It is Tito Santana, Tales from the Ring, available everywhere, Amazon.com. I have a link on my website to it. And Tito, I hope you sell 1 million books.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again. Yes, thanks again. Have a good weekend.
Okay, Arriba.
There you go. Tito Santana, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, what a fast hour. It seems like we just started the interview. And, no lie, hand to God here, and I'm even being videotaped to prove it. I had goosebumps talking to Tito Santana. I had chills. I mean, just what a childhood hero, and, I mean, brings the fan right out of me. And I want to thank Bill Melody for running things on this end of the board and videotaping, keeping the camera running and setting everything up. Bill is the man, and Bill will be following me until about, 3:30, Bill, with 3:20, and he's going to be playing country music, the Country Music Hall, and then at 3:20 he'll turn it over to the Fightin' Phils, the Phils and the Diamondbacks here on WBCB, and Bill's back tomorrow from 5 to 10 a.m. BillMelody.com is his website. When Country Was Gold in the Delaware Valley is his book. My website is ProWrestlingRadio.com. That's ProWrestlingRadio.com. If you missed any of today's interview with Tito Santana, let me tell you, this is one you want to hear, and this is one that's going to go down as a Pro Wrestling Radio classic. That will be up on the website sometime today. It'll be up on iTunes. The podcast should be up by the end of the day as well. And, again, you can get his book, Tales from the Ring, on ProWrestlingRadio.com. And, again, you can catch my column, The Camel Clutch, on thecamelclutchblog.com. And I'll transcribe this interview and have it up in a story sometime this week. All right, everybody, have a great week. What a day. Tito Santana, Arriba. Further ado, let's bring him up. He is a true WWE Hall of Famer. He is the author of Tales from the Ring. Tito Santana, welcome to Pro Wrestling Radio.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor to have you. And as I was telling you a couple of minutes before the show started, your book, Tales from the Ring, now available on Amazon.com, everywhere. I absolutely love it.
I've had quite a few fans that have read the book that, they learned a lot about me, about my life. And, I've had some people that have told me that tears have come down their face, which, wow. It's nice to hear that. They really enjoyed the book, and according to you really enjoyed it also, and thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. What do you think? I don't know if you were able to hear on the phone. What do you think when you listen back and you hear your old promos and you just kind of envision and just sit back and listen?
Well, it brings back memories, It's just like it happened yesterday. That feud with Greg the Hammer Valentine, it's probably the match that made me, or the feud that made Tito Santana.
That comeback and pin Greg Valentine, but after that, he took advantage of your back while it was turned. He gave you a big knee to the back, clamped on his leg lock, and would not let go. Now, is this going to interfere with his 30-day clause?
Well, Lord, right now, I don't know. The only thing I know right now is that I had a hard time. I can't walk on my own right now. And I don't know how much damage it did to my legs, to my knees. But I guarantee you might not be able to defend this in 30 days, Greg. But if I can walk, you're going to see me back in that ring within 30 days. And, Lord, I want to make it clear to you and to everybody else out there listening. Greg, it's not over between you and I. I still got the belt, but it's not for the belt anymore. I want you. Cobarde, pagarás. Tito Santana te hará que pagues. Arriba!
What you gonna do? That's killer. WBCB presents. That's cool. Are you talking to me? Pro Wrestling Radio. Did you feel it? Oh, the damn goal. Call in with a question or comment. 6-1. Just bring it.
Santana, it was the longest feud in the history of the WWF, according to Howard Finkel.
Wow.
So, I mean, for us to go out there and then have all kinds of different matches, and the houses would never drop. You know, we kept selling out everywhere we went, and it was a great feeling.
Yeah. What was it? And I've had Greg on the show before, and he speaks very highly of you. What was it about Greg and the chemistry that you guys had that made it such a successful feud?
Well, I think day in and day out, every time we went into the ring, we gave him a different match. We gave him a fight, and the people really believed what they saw, because we pretty much, after a match, I would always go up to him and I'd say, God, I've been in easier street fights than the match that I just had with you. I mean, we had them all. We had hour matches, we had time limit matches, we had no DQs, tape fist, lumberjack matches. And the fans, you know, were never disappointed. You know, every time we stepped into the ring, they knew that they were going to see a fight, and you know, they believed.
At 1-888-922-2149. Oh, it's true. Don't make me hurt you. To be the man, you got that's all time. I hate your ever. And now your host of the show. That's how I live.
Good afternoon and welcome to a very special edition of Pro Wrestling Radio. Without further ado, let me bring up my first guest. You know, in the 10 years that I've been doing Pro Wrestling Radio and all the superstars that I've had on in the wrestling industry, it's guys like my guest today that get me excited, that get the juices going, that bring the kid out in me. Here's a man that I remember going to see at the Philadelphia Spectrum when I was about 8 or 9 years old, wrestling the likes of Greg the Hammer Valentine, Don Morocco, the Iron Sheik. And as I get older and watch the tapes, watch the DVDs, I am still just as entertained today by this man's matches as I was as a kid. So without further, this is Eric Arjulo, your host of Pro Wrestling Radio. And don't forget to check out my daily blog, www.camelclutchblog.com, where you can read about wrestling, mixed martial arts, football, all sports, pop culture, politics, and more. That's www.camelclutchblog.com.
Tito, what exactly happened there?
Oh, Lord. My knee might be twisted, torn ligaments or something. I know, Greg Valentine, that I beat you. I proved to you and everybody else, Greg Valentine, that I was the better man. And after the match was over, Lord, he's trying to hurt me and put me where I'm not able to defend this title within 30 days so he can take that belt. He proved that he couldn't beat me tonight, Lord. And now he's going to do anything in his power to put me out of wrestling. Greg Valentine, I won that match, but the war's not over, brother. I want you back, Greg Valentine. You try to break my leg and you... Oh, Lord.
Tito, take it easy. Now, we saw what happened. We saw that you did have a collision with the referee. We saw that you did manage to survive.